Hey, how's everyone doing? Welcome to another day of quarantine. I'm your host, Alex, and this is Craft Mindset. Today we're going to be talking about what self-love is, what self-care looks like, and we're going to talk about some tips for you to feel better every day. So let's get started. Let's start with self-care really quick because I think that's more popular in social media right now. There's a lot of information going around online, a lot of cute little infographics with like pictures and descriptions of like, oh, here's what you can do for some self-care, take a bubble bath, get your nails done, meditate. There's all sorts of things that you can do for self-care. Especially right now in this pandemic, I think self-care has become more important than ever. First of all, how are you guys doing with this pandemic? It's been crazy. I feel like day to day you really don't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect next week. I don't know what to expect next month. And I don't know when it's gonna end, but it feels like we got another year or so in this. So let's hang in there. Let's work on our self-care. Leave a comment below what your self-care routine is right now and how you've been doing in this pandemic. For me, I think my self-care routine's been a little rough. Just like I don't know day to day or week to week what's going on, I think my self-care routine's changed a lot to accommodate my ever-evolving emotions around this pandemic. It's been really hard, and I'm sure it's been hard for you guys as well. So I'd love to hear what your self-care is, so maybe I can add some of those to my routine, and hopefully this can become more of a conversation. I think for me, this pandemic has been like just a roller coaster, a lot of ups and downs. Been a lot of talk about being productive in this free time. Now that you have all this free time and you're always complaining, oh, I don't have time to do things, and now suddenly you do have the time to do them. There's all this pressure to be super productive, which is ridiculous because we're still human. And even though we're not working as much or physically going to school, that doesn't mean that we don't have the stress in our lives. Like, we are living through a pandemic. We are living through history right now, guys. So make the most of it, but also be kind to yourself. Self-love is the love that we experience with other people applied to ourselves. And I would go as far as saying it involves building a relationship with ourselves. And that can be hard because we're our own worst critic. We're still learning to be kind to each other. And I think as we get older, it gets easier. I would say there's a process. I think when we're young, that we're just learning about the self. We're starting to establish the self and recognize that. When you're a baby, you look in the mirror and maybe you don't recognize that. Like a puppy looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize itself. It starts barking at itself, starts playing. I think that's similar for young children. They're kind of figuring out what it means to have a self and to possess this selfness. Then as we get older, friends become more important, especially as a teen. You're starting to learn more about interacting with other people. You gain more interest in other people. You start getting crushes. You start building stronger friendships. And especially when we're in middle school and we're starting to develop this interest in other people, I feel like that's when we start to also develop a more critical voice towards ourselves, and we start becoming more self-conscious, becoming more aware of ourselves and our actions and how those actions impact others and how others might see us. And that can be really hard to build that relationship with ourselves, to feel confident when we're just becoming aware of the strength of our perception. We all want to be liked, and it's really hard, and that critical voice comes out. We start to shame ourselves. Not that this can't happen at other ages, obviously, but I think that around middle school, once we start entering our teens, it becomes really apparent when those social relationships start to become more important to us. So how do we go from this middle schooler to being more mature, more comfortable with ourselves? How can we build this comfort with ourselves? Because in the end, we are the ones that we spend the most time with. I think it's important to remember that it's a process. Like, yeah, we are learning about social relationships. We're developing this critical voice. And that voice is there to help you. It's there to help you become an independent person, to learn how to interact with other people. These are really important life skills that we need as we get older to develop that independence and be able to survive on our own. But when our critical voice becomes too strong, it can definitely impact us in a negative way. Over time, it can get strong if we feed into those thoughts. So what I really want us to work on here is combating that and developing a stronger, healthier critical voice, developing that self more, but with a sense of love. When we're teenagers, we learn the importance of social relationships, and we learn how to treat people better. Of course, there's a ton of drama because we're just learning these things. And as we get older, it gets easier to have friendships. We learn how to talk through our problems. We learn how to be a good friend. And that's why it's important to do the same thing with yourself, to learn these things, to learn how to be a good friend to yourself and to love yourself. Yeah, in a nutshell, self-love, building a relationship with yourself, just the same as you would build a relationship with another person. How does self-care relate to self-love? So I would say self-care is the process that we use to build a relationship with ourselves. So it's about doing things that make us feel good, make us feel better, and help us learn to trust ourselves and trust our voice. So self-care has many different forms. I think self-care is very popular on social media, but I don't think that every form of self-care is always talked about. I think a lot of the warm, fuzzy, feel-good self-care, let me take a bubble bath and drink some tea, read a book, those things are great. And I want you to keep doing those things. I do those things because they feel good. That is just human nature. You want to do things that feel good. And that's why we put a lot of things off. And that's why we like to procrastinate. And I think procrastination is one of those things that can really ruin our relationships with ourselves. Have you guys ever had a future me? So back when I was in college, back when I was still in school, I had a future me. My motto was, this is a problem for future me, and I would do whatever I wanted because I wanted to feel good. But that often meant, going to hang out with my friends instead of doing homework, going to a party instead of finishing my essay or studying for a test. It was definitely stressful to put things off for future me and have future me deal with these problems. So future me is no longer someone that I mistreat. Future me is someone that I treat well. Future me is someone I prepare things for. I get things ready the night before so future me can have a better day the next day. I put a cup of water by my bed at night so that future me can wake up and have a cup of water when they wake up. Future me, I actually named her Agnes because future me wants to retire. And so I'm saving money right now for future me, for Agnes. And I think these things are important. And I'm not saying procrastination is the worst thing in the world, but don't keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, because that's going to impact your relationship with yourself. When someone says they're going to do something and they keep putting it off and putting it off, you lose that faith in them. And the same thing happens when you do it to yourself. So let's back up. There's a lot of different ways to show self-care and do self-care and build this relationship with yourself. And self-care, like I said, is a bunch of warm, fuzzy, feel-good things because we like those things. I would say procrastination is an obstacle that many of us deal with. Like I said, it's not the worst thing. It's sometimes okay to put things off. Sometimes we need to put things off. But don't make a pattern of it. Don't keep putting off the same things. Find a way to get those things done. Getting those things done is a form of self-care, because even though it might not feel good, like, eating ice cream, it doesn't give us that high right away. It definitely prevents building that tension of knowing that you have all these things to do at once because you've been putting them off. That is a huge stressor. Be a good person to your future self. Name your future self. Your future self matters. You matter. You and your future self are the same person, and you guys both matter. So treat your future self with respect. Leave me a comment. What's your future self's name? I want to hear your future self's names. Self-care can be those things that we know make us feel good, but maybe it's more of a process. Things that don't give you instant gratification, but that in the long run make you feel better. So examples of this could be exercising, meditating, taking time for yourself. It's doing those things that might be a little bit harder, but feel better in the long term. So there's a lot of different ways of self-care. Maybe something you're doing you didn't realize was self-care, but these are all forms of self-care. Anything that helps you to build that relationship with yourself towards self-love. All those things can be self-care. Last thing that I want to talk to you guys about today is what are some things that you can do or check every day to make sure that you're feeling your best. And these things aren't hard. These are just some little ideas of ways you can check in with yourself. Number 1, did you drink water? If you haven't drank water, go drink some water right now. Number 2, did you eat today? You don't have to eat at a certain time. That's not important, but it is important to make sure you get enough food. Otherwise, you're going to end up a cranky bear that just woke up from hibernation. So make sure you get some food in your body. I don't care if you're trying to diet. I don't care if we need food. You need food. That is how our bodies function. That is how we can think. That is how we get things done. Food gives us energy. Number 3, did you get enough sleep? Adult humans need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. If you're a baby or if you're a lion in the jungle, you might need a little bit more sleep, and that's okay. But just making sure you're getting at least 7 hours of sleep every night just to help stabilize our mood, help you focus during the day, and just help you feel good. Tip number 4, make sure you do some sort of physical activity. I would say physical activity is not something that you necessarily need to do every day, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do like an intense workout, an intense HIIT workout. You don't need to be pouring sweat. Physical activity can be anything from doing a lap around your house. It can be doing the laundry, just moving from place to place, doing some physical activity. Sometimes I count cleaning my room as physical activity because, it can be a project. Those can be physical activities too. It doesn't have to be the traditional physical activity. It could be dancing in your room. You choose, you define that. And you don't have to do it every day, but I would say try to do it at least 3 times a week just to make sure you feel good. And if you're having a particularly rough day, I find that going for a walk, getting some fresh air, always helps me feel better. So those are my 4 tips if you're not feeling great right now. If you're not, check again. Did you drink water? Did you eat? Did you get enough sleep? Maybe you need to take a nap. And number 4, make sure you're doing some sort of physical activity at least 3 times a week. And if you're not feeling great, find some way to incorporate that. Definitely can pull you out of a mood. These are just some tips to help you feel better. If you do have depression or are worried that you have depression or anxiety, make sure that you're addressing those things with your doctor. I definitely don't want you to think that these are instant fixes. These are things that take work. But these are some tips if you're having a particularly rough day of some things to check just to make yourself feel better. And that's all for today's video. I hope you guys learned something. I hope to hear what your self-care routine is and what your future self's name is. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you want to learn more about self-love and how to build a relationship with yourself, hit subscribe. And don't forget to leave your comments down below. In our next video, we'll be doing a project for our friends, learning about friendship, and learning how the relationships that we already have can help us build a relationship with ourselves. So check back for that later. All right, see you guys. Bye.